Hiya, I'm a Zamen, and Persona 3 is a very impactful game with a truly standout ending. An ending that has several renditions, and I want to talk about them. All of them. All of them that I can get my eyeballs on. I want to compare and contrast the following versions of Persona 3's ending. We got Persona 3 Reload, Persona 3 the movie, Winter of Rebirth, Persona 3 The Weird Masquerade Beyond the Blue Sky, Mail Route, Persona 3 the manga, and finally, original Persona 3 plus the variations from Persona 3 Portable. So 5-ish, not 6, 5-ish endings total. Each of these endings have differences in how they interpret the ending of Persona 3. Differences that are usually relative to their medium, and how that medium alters the message. Obviously, there are going to be spoilers for Persona 3's ending, so if you are playing through the game, or will play it in the near future, or want to watch someone else play it, go ahead and do that and then come back. With that said though, spoilers ahead, and now let me dive into every version of March 5th and spoil the hell out of this game. The protagonist is dead. Makoto Yuki, Minato Arisato, Sakuya Shiomi. Hero, blue-haired boy, whatever you call him. He dies on the rooftop of Gekkoukan High in the presence of an Aegis. This moment is preceded by a few factors. The protagonist has defeated Nyx, and as a result has caused all of C's to lose their memories of the Dark Hour and the bonds they have forged. In preparation of that, C's made a promise to meet up before the graduation ceremony. That's the setup for the Persona 3 ending. And after the ending, it's usually followed with a version of Kimi no Kyoko, or Memories of You. With that context, let's now begin this discussion by talking about the most recent iteration of March 5th, Persona 3 Reload, which begins with a knock. Aegis, voiced by Dawn M. Bennett, knocks on the hero's door and informs him of her lingering knowledge of the battle against the Fall. In this version, the hero and Aegis never forgot about their promise, and they both quickly agree to go to the promised location. The scene then cuts to the graduation ceremony at Gekkoukan High, where the class representative then passes the microphone to the valedictorian Mitsuru, who sounds clear, clinical, and to the point. In front of the school, she delivers a rehearsed speech about the importance of seizing opportunity and how it relates to the passing of her father from sudden illness. At those words, Mitsuru loses her composure and begins to remember her father's true death. And we then swap to an animated cutscene by Wit Studio. Growing impassioned, Mitsuru recalls losing her will to live and then implores others to avoid that fate, to face the future head-on alongside her friends. The short speech manages to force the rest of C's to remember, even Ken and Koromaru from outside. They all unify and then jog upstairs. To give a few thoughts on this scene, I dislike how the scene lacks a sense of urgency. Everyone is so calm and confident about the whole situation. Mitsuru continues her speech after a bout of confusion, but it lacks force.
I remember now. That's right. After my father died, there was a time I lost motivation to live my life. But no longer. I shall honor my father's will. I won't run from the future. I'll face it head on. Not a single doubt remains in my mind. And the reason...
Our promise! Mitsuru.
That's right! It's because I have forged such wonderful friendships. And we swore that we would never lose hope, no matter what the future may bring.
And don't take this as me criticizing the voice actress Allegra Clark. I like her Mitsuru. Throughout the game, she is wonderful. The issue lies in how the scene is set up. Animation-wise, there's no urgency. So even if Mitsuru's VA was reading these lines with the pain and anguish of Mr. Spider-Man from that one scene, it would not match. Going by the pretty pictures, all of C's seem to be a bit confused, but they process the sudden influx of emotions very well, and then they jog upstairs, happily and excited to hang out with their friends. There's no frantic sense of urgency. Who, speaking of which, we can then transition to, as we see cherry blossoms. Aigis and the hero are up here, the hero already resting on her lap, and then Aigis begins to discuss her new outlook on life. And I can just play it here because we are going to discuss the vocal performance of Dawn M. Bennett. Spoiler, she gives a 10 out of 10 performance.
I admit, I'm finally noticing the beauty of spring. It's wonderful. And yet, without exception, each and every season will come to an end. We fought side by side. We faced the world's end. And now, I'm finally beginning to understand what it was I'd been searching for. I always wondered what it really meant to live. Now I think it's following your heart, fighting for what you can change, and accepting the things you can't. Nothing on this earth lasts forever. Every life will one day fizzle out. That holds true for all of us, and as soon as you come to terms with it, you realize something. You see what really matters, and find out what it is that gives your life meaning. When I learned that I wasn't strong enough, I was tormented by it. Now I understand why. Protecting others is the duty I was given. But to me, it was more than an obligation. At some point, it became something I wanted to do for myself. Once I decided to try and prevent the fall, something inside me clicked. When I thought about how I might never see you again, that's when I first understood what mattered to me the most. And so, I made up my mind. What I want is to protect you from now until the end of time. I want to stay by your side. And I know I'm not the only one out there who could do this. But still, I want to. Because I'm positive, if I do it for you, then nothing's a waste. My life will have meaning. So, thank you. Sorry. What's gotten into me? It's good. I finally found a reason to live. So why am I... They're here. I see it now. I have friends. We support each other through thick and thin. Not everything needs to be for some greater purpose. Just caring about someone can be enough. That's all we need to give our lives meaning. As for me, I found my path. And that's to protect you with my life. Thank you so much for everything. You must be tired. Go ahead and rest now. I'll be right here. I won't be going anywhere. In a moment, the others will be joining us.
I love how she holds the ending of each syllable on each word. You hear the t's, the long s's, all of it, because she is speaking slowly and with purpose. It makes Aigis seem more human, and like each sentence she utters is her slowly putting together her realization. This version of Aigis speaking to the protagonist sounds so personal. It's Aigis exposing her thoughts and her experiences and providing her perspective. It employs simpler language to feel more grounded and helps sell Aigis' inexperience in these topics. Dawn M. Bennett really sells this, as her voice makes it clear that Aigis, despite her declarations, is still uncertain about these topics, but is taking the necessary steps to be human. The line read of "My life will have purpose" is amazing, because it ends up sounding more like a whimper, a desperate plea for the hero.
And nothing's a waste. My life will have meaning.
This version of March 5th makes Aigis feel like a more realized character and leaves players with the notion that people can give their lives meaning through any choice that they decide to wholeheartedly pursue for their enjoyment. As she says, not everything needs to be for some greater purpose. Just caring about someone can be enough, though it keeps in mind the idea that hardship does exist and there are things that cannot be overcome. As at the start of the speech, Aigis states, "Fighting what you can change and accepting the things you can't." It assures the player that Aigis has chosen her meaning in life. It gives the player that message and asserts Aigis as a character. This is her expounding her thoughts. Following that, the player is then prompted to close the hero's eyes, who does so as the rest of C's arrives. The scene then shifts to a 2D animation where we see the hero at rest with a content smile on his face. Now visually, everything about this March 5th is wonderful. It feels ethereal and almost dreamlike, with the sound design hard carrying to create the sense of peace and serenity. You can hear the wind blowing and the waves crashing against the shores, birds chirp. It feels warm. We get a lot of focus on Aigis staring at the protagonist and looking up to the sky. Although I do think this dreamlike quality is detracted from when the camera shifts to showing past scenes or showing us C's running up the stairs. It makes the scene feel less intimate and personal, which is a shame because I think Aigis in her own little bubble really does sell this sense of finality. Plus, I do think that Aigis' solemn expression and tear-stricken joy does contrast a bit with how fun-loving and excited the rest of C's look, which kinda pulls you out of the moment. However, the game's new version of Kimi no Kyoko, Memories of You, is very good. I still have a few thoughts about this one, but we're gonna save that for later as we now transition fully into the medium of 2D animation with Persona 3 the movie, Winter of Rebirth. If you don't know, back in the mid-2010s, Persona 3 was adapted into a quadrilogy, and their rendition of March 5th is as follows, with Makoto Yuki, our protagonist, regaining his memories upon seeing Aigis and the cherry blossoms while he is walking towards school for the graduation ceremony. There's no prior conversation with her, it's then and there, and he ditches the graduation ceremony, which right off the bat gives this version of the protagonist, Makoto Yuki, a lot more agency. And that makes sense, as he has no player, and in this film is his own fully realized character. We then get to see Makoto ascending the stairs, and he's exhausted. It's presented as a Herculean effort as he struggles to stay present. The way the camera briefly takes his perspective and shows how he's shambling forward, barely staying upright, going towards the light. and then being met by the warm colors of the roof, the clear blue sky, and Aigis. The scenes on the roof here are dreamlike, they feel so pure. When Aigis and Makoto meet, Makoto collapses. The exhaustion is wearing on him. He isn't long for the world. And the scene then cuts to the graduation ceremony where the energy change is clear. The colors are darker and feels more realistic, it's drier. There's no class rep this time, just gamer girl Maya calling Mitsuru up to speak. And Mitsuru begins by saying that we shouldn't avert our eyes from the fact that the future is finite. She begins discussing the loss of her father, but the glare from the sun catches her attention, directing the rest of C's to look outside. Same with Ken, who happens to be outside walking for Umaru. Following the sunlight, they all see the cherry blossoms. And that makes them all remember the promise they made. Instantaneously, everyone gets up and runs out of the auditorium. Mitsuru doesn't finish her speech. These doesn't gather in front of the school like they did in Reload, where they were in the middle of the auditorium and said like, alright, let's do this. No. Instead, they all just get up and run. The look of shock on their faces sells their urgency. Their friend is upstairs waiting and they are going to leave them hanging. Each of them cares so deeply they all rush into action. Words don't express their feelings. The action does. We then cut back to the roof where Makoto lays on Aigis' lap and Aigis begins her reflection on how she understands life. Though the movie does interrupt it with small cuts of C's running up the stairs, and C's does look very frantic. Back to Aigis though, she claims she found her reason for living, her purpose, protecting Makoto Yuki. She then tells him to rest and that the others are coming. The film then ends as Makoto's vision gets blurry. He tilts his head and sees his friends approaching, getting closer. The camera then zooms into his eyes as he dies. He was able to see his friends one last time. This version of the ending is a lot shorter, as there's no big Aigis speech on the meaning of life. Instead, it's just Aigis making her intentions clear. She cares about Makoto and has tied her life to him. She faced death and she was afraid to die, because it would deprive her of Makoto. And that's it. Her love is her reason for living. No broad overall message, so unlike Reload, this version won't really leave you thinking. But the build-up to the moments and the way the graduation is handled does somewhat make up for it. Because instead of Mitsuru's speech rousing C's, everyone's willpower brings them forward. And it's genuinely impactful how each of them scramble for the exit once they remember. It makes the moment feel like a gut punch, and you can see how bad they feel for nearly forgetting. It sells the nature of everyone's bond much more. However, this ending does have the side effect of making you feel like Makoto x Aigis is canon, because that last scene reads as more of a confession rather than a person reflecting on life and its meaning, mainly because, once again, it's short. However, I happen to like Makoto x Aigis, so it's not really a big detractor. And that should make sense, as these movies kinda do play in support of Makoto x Aigis, as during the final battle against Nyx, Aigis is the last voice that reaches Makoto, instead of Shinji like it was in the games. In the movies, it is Aigis who gives the final push, which is something I don't like. In conclusion, movie March 5th is short, and now we will move on to something with a bit more meat on them bones. Human meat, actually. Also, if you are enjoying this video, then please consider subscribing or liking the video. Number go up equal better YouTuber. Ahem. Let's get weird as I discuss Persona 3, The Weird Masquerade, Beyond the Blue Sky. Like Oshinoko Season 2 has taught many people, lots of popular games or shows tend to get stage play adaptations. Just look at the Demon Slayer one you can find on Crunchyroll. However, this stage play is a bit unique, as the weird Masquerade has a gimmick, where the protagonist ships between being the male, Sakuya Shiomi, or the FeMC, Hitone. I'm only gonna talk about the male MC because, truthfully, I don't care about the FeMC in the slightest. Sorry, but I have no nostalgia towards her, but her Naginata is cool, and some of her music is quite sick. Anyway, let's talk about this weird masquerade where we are going to rely on the YouTube automatic translated subtitles. So this one will focus less on text and words and more on the actual performances. Plus, this one is mainly for fun. In this rendition of the ending, Sakuya does not remember the final battle against Nyx and needs to be reminded by Aigis before the ceremony in the dorms, just like in Reload. The scene then cuts to the graduation ceremony, and I really like how C's is just standing in the auditorium with the rest of the viewers while Mitsuru is center stage. It's just neat. And speaking of Mitsuru, this performance by actress Asami Tano is very good. I'm gonna play a clip for you.
父を病で失った。違うわ。思い出した。そう、私は父のシリフで一度は生きる意味さえ失いかけた。でも今は違う。父の意志は私が継ぐ。未来から逃げない。必ず受けて立つ。もう二度と私は迷わない。なぜなら私には大切な仲間がいて、そしてどんな未来からも目を背けないと誓い合ったからだ。
ああ、そうだ、間違いない。行くぞミツル。
明彦、
皆さんよかった、間に合った。来たかまだ。はい、
そっか、そうだよ。ゆとりちゃん、行くよ。
約束の場所へ。
As I understand stage acting, it involves a lot of over-the-top acting to emphasize emotion so the audience can see it, and Asami Tano really goes all in. I can see her emotion, and I love the moment of realization, even if this expression, when paused, does look a bit silly. I love how she delivers the end of her speech and how it relates back to her friends, because with her tone, it sounds like she's on the verge of tears. The way her voice gets somewhat hoarse as she starts yelling with passion and calls the rest of C's to action. So when she and the rest of C's run off to go find Sakuya, they are urgent. I love how they call out to each other. It's frantic. The scene then transitions to Aigis and Sakuya, who we can tell based on his somewhat stilted body language isn't well. When he sits down next to Aigis, there's this lack of grace, this feeling of exhaustion that he has. As they sit and let the moment wash over them, the stage play then takes a knife and stabs me in the heart 37 times.
風の声、光の粒、まどろむ君に注ぐ、忘れない優しい微笑み、悲しさ隠した瞳を願うこと辛く でも立ち向かう勇気君にもらっただから行くね
Instead of Aigis explaining her feelings, she sings them. She lets the lyrics of Memories of You do the talking, and it's amazing. It's heartfelt and melancholic. It's a heartfelt, melancholic celebration of life, the life of Sakuya, and it makes Kimi no Kyoko the actual message with its value of life. Aside from visuals, I can't talk about the stage play's message, but I can talk about Memories of You and why it's such a good ending song for Persona 3. So let's pull up those lyrics, most of which I have memorized, of the version that Sapphire sang, from this wonderful cover that I listen to yearly. The lyrics I'm looking at, though, are the ones you can find on the Mega 10 wiki for ease of access. We can make an easy interpretation of Memories of You. We can interpret that this song is being sung from the perspective of Aigis about the protagonist's death, which can be made quite clear as I will read you now the first stanza of the song. The voice of the wind and the droplets of light flow over you as you doze. I will never forget the gentle smile and the eyes you hid in sorrow. You gave me the courage to wish, even when it hurts, and to fight, so I can go on. In my dreams, even when I wake up, I will see you again. In both the movie and Reload, you can hear the sound of the wind, the colorfulness of the scene, and the bright light of the clear blue sky that are the setting of the protag's death. The gentle smile and eyes that hid sorrow relate to the protag as he is dying, and he elected not to tell anyone. When he passes, his smile is gentle, because he was satisfied. He just barely managed to keep his promise. And that, if you can't tell, is sad. There was more he wanted to do, yes, but this was close enough. A later line then says, "You gave me the courage to wish and to fight," which fits perfectly with Aigis, because going by the answer or episode Aigis, or the fact that in the ending, Aigis is thanking the protag for teaching her how to be alive, we can see that these lyrics are about the protagonist. They are the memories of you, the player, the blue-haired boy. The song is Aigis' promise to the protag to keep their memory intact, and it makes references to the protag's actions. The whole line about defending the fragile and fleeting world with your hands. And of course, the song ends with, "I will never leave you," echoing Aigis' sentiment when the protag shuts his eyes, and she tells him,
It'll be okay. I'm right by your side, here to protect you forevermore.
the song is written about this ending scene, and that makes sense, because it's literally the end of the game. It's the curtains closing on the protag, and it just beats the player over the head with Aigis' sentiment. The longing to see the protag again is melancholic, but it's also hopeful and isn't meant to be delusional or in a "I can't wait to see you in the afterlife." Aigis sees the protag in her dreams and keeps him in her memories, as I'm sure many Persona 3 fans do as well. He, the protag, and by extension Persona 3, is kept in the memories of people and acts as something that stays with you and informs you. Aigis' memories of the protag inform how she will live her life. And that might be a bit obvious, but we should keep that in mind for this March 5th discussion. Back to the stage show. After Aigis sings the first parts of Memories of You, she speaks to Sakuya directly and affirms her desire to live and that her purpose in life is to be with him and to protect him, to which Sakuya responds by reaching out and cleaning her tears. You will notice that in this version as well, Sakuya isn't sitting on Aigis' lap, he's resting next to her, sitting beside her, and that kinda makes the face touch feel a bit more personal. After which, the rest of C's then shows up and starts singing Memories of You proper, as during Aigis' portion, her actress, ZAQ, Zach, whatever, sang Memories of You with no instruments, just her voice. But when C's joins in on the singing, they are running around the stage to represent their mad dash through the school to reach the roof. And it's here where Sakuya finally rests on Aegis's lap, as the song then wraps up with Sakuya sharing his last words, and Aegis holds his hand. Sakuya then gets tired and shuts his eyes, which is when C's arrives for real, calling out to Sakuya, so the last thing he hears is his friends. He was close. Really close. In this rendition, he doesn't get to see them, but hearing them is more than enough. And then the stage show ends, as Ryoji starts dancing to the joy of being in a corona-free world. With that wrapped up, let's now talk about the Persona 3 manga, which is quite bizarre. For example, during the battle against Nick's avatar, there's two ways in which this battle usually goes. Either A, C's works together as a team, or the protag solos it. In the manga version, the protag, Minato Arisato, creates Messiah, and then makes his persona grow as Messiah and Nick's avatar duel in a battle across Tatsumi Port Island. They are literally as big as the Moonlight Bridge. But I'm here to talk about March 5th, so let's jump to March 4th, where right off the bat there's a big difference, because in this edition, Aegis does not retain her memories following the final battle. She only remembers being stationed at Yakushima, but each day without fail she goes to Gekukan High, because she feels like she must, but every day fails to work up the courage to step inside, always turning away. On March 4th, Aegis and Minato catch sight of each other and the action jogs each other's memories, as then on March 5th, Aegis knocks on Minato's door and the two then agree to go wait on the rooftop of Gekukan High. And something I really like about this version is that there are scenes of the members of C's realizing that their memories don't add up. Like Mitsuru sees that on the day of her father's sudden illness-related death, he took a picture of C's. Pretty weird. And Ken ends up recovering his memories on his own after finding traces of Shinji's cooking skill via notes he left behind on what he and Koromaru enjoy eating. It's very sweet. And it gives Ken his own agency as he and Koromaru then run towards Gekukan High. Meanwhile, during the graduation ceremony, Mitsuru gives her speech, mentions her father, and realizes that, yeah, the memories don't add up. She regains her memories and then delivers an impassioned speech about how she will face the future and has her friends to thank for this power. And that speech is then what brings back the memories of the rest of C's, just like in Reload. However, the reaction in this version is a lot stronger, as Fuka, Junpei, and Akihiko all have these looks of horror, while Yukari is brought to tears. They are then overtaken by a manic elation and then run off towards the roof. Which then takes us to Aegis and Minato, who in a change of pace are sitting back to back. Aegis then begins to speak, reflecting on how she came to define her purpose for living. How to live is to face the inevitable end, which has made her realize that people in general, that she, like all of them, want proof of her existence. Her desire is to protect others, to protect Minato forevermore, saying that something like that is enough for her, and for people to go on living. Then she says that Minato must be tired, and affirms that she'll stay by his side. But instead of resting, Minato speaks, and I'll read this out loud. Thank you, everyone. I may have arrived at the answer to life, but still, I want to know about the world's future, because it's the future we fought to protect. It's the lives you guys choose to live. Which is why it doesn't fill me with regrets, rather anticipation. Please, be at ease, for I will protect it all by your side. You and the lives we live into the future. I'd love to see them all. And feeling that way now, it fills me with joy. He doesn't die. He lives. He actually lives. The line, "I will protect it all, by your side," is confirmation of this fact. He, in the prior chapter, during the battle against death, did create the Great Seal. The "I will protect you" line is the author saying, yes, he will be a doorman, and his corpse is gonna keep on shambling with his pals. Plus, in this version, there's also no line about Aigis reflecting on the things you can't control. Which, yeah, I do not like this ending, because it imparts less of a message and removes the tragedy. It depletes the meaning of Persona 3's themes and structure. Hello, Memento Mori, you will be given a year? And it hinders the development of the rest of the cast and Aigis. Yes, it's nice that there's a world where the blue-haired boy lives, but that's not a version of the story I like. That's a version of the story that wants to reject the inevitability of death. That's a version of the story where Aigis' newfound values are not tested. In keeping him alive, it invalidates the sacrifice and removes the satisfaction and the exception of death in exchange for a false life. Through the blue-haired boy's death, we the player get to disconnect from the world and feel the absence of his loss, and are able to then learn and grow from it. His finality adds impact, and the gentle smile he had is his satisfaction. Where, in this one, the smile he has is one of pain and lies. He is hiding his suffering from his friends to appear tall and strong. But it's a lie. He is not at rest. Let's wash the taste of this out of my mouth and go to Persona 3 Original plus Persona 3 Portable. Because truthfully, the ending between these two versions is literally the same line for line, dialogue for dialogue. The main difference is that Persona 3 Portable is a visual novel, so you don't get the iconic Protex sitting on Aigis' lap, hence why Portable isn't in the thumbnail. But now, let's examine the ending that saved my life. It begins with Aigis knocking on the door of the blue-haired boy's room and revealing her memories, which the blue-haired boy has managed to remember as well, having never forgotten the final battle. He then agrees to go with Aigis to the meeting place to wait for the rest of 3's. The scene then cuts to the graduation as the class representative gives their final remark and calls upon Mitsuru, who steps forward and talks about seizing opportunity while they still have a chance, discussing how she felt when her father passed away from sudden illness. To which the scene then cuts to a 2D animated cutscene by Studio Point Pictures, where Mitsuru then continues her speech, beginning it as a moment of introspection. Her first sentence about losing her will to live is filled with uncertainty, but then she rouses 3's memories.
I remember. Yes. With my father's death, I lost my purpose in life.
Hang on. Wasn't I supposed to?
Akihiko-senpai. What's up?
Sit down, you two.
But now, I have something to live for. No longer will I run from the future. I will face it head-on, carrying out my father's will. I am resolved, and without reservation.
The group then assembles in the middle of the auditorium, and they're filled with joy and excitement. Less panic and less urgency. They all had a moment of shock, but it was replaced by joy. And that joy fuels them as they run upstairs to the roof. The scene then cuts to the rooftop as the blue-haired boy rests on Aigis' lap. There's a few cherry blossoms in the air, and Aigis then gets to speak on her newfound understanding of life. And I truly love this performance by Karen Strassman. I really do. I love how in this section you can hear as she evolves from being robotic to being emotional. gradually becoming more and more human, and I shall now play it so you can understand.
After fighting alongside you and facing the world's end, I finally began to understand what it means to live. Thinking for yourself, not running away, accepting the inevitable. All things eventually come to an end. Every living thing will one day disappear. Only by accepting this can one discover what they truly want, what the meaning of their life will be. I understand now why I was so tormented by my lack of strength. Protecting others became more than just an order I had to obey. I wanted to do it for my own reasons. I realized this once I decided to try and prevent the fall. When I thought I might never see you again, something else became clear to me. What I wanted most. And so, I made up my mind. I decided that I would continue to protect you. I want to be your strength. I know I'm not the only one who can do this, but that's okay. My life will be worth living if it's for this reason. Thank you. You're right. What am I doing? I understand now. So I should be happy.
Hey!
Everyone! I realize now that I have friends as well. You don't have to save the world to find meaning in life. Sometimes, all you need is something simple, like someone to take care of. I'll keep on living no matter what, so that I can protect you.
You don't have to save the world to find meaning in life. This is a phrase that has stuck with me ever since I played Persona 3. It's a statement that truly grounds the story, because Persona 3 is a very silly and outlandish story, with robots, goopy slime monsters, the moon being an interdimensional alien that latched onto the collective unconsciousness of humanity, and the general trope nonsense, a la Operation Babe Hunt and the Hot Springs incident. But you don't have to save the world to find meaning in life. It's a phrase that reaches beyond the story to the player. In a sense, this version of Persona 3's ending is the one that talks the most directly to the player. The manga, the stage show, and the movie, all of them are of Aigis talking to Minato, Sakuya, Makoto, these blue-haired boys who are their own defined characters. But here, in the original, there is no defined character. It's just the player, and whatever they impose onto the blue-haired boy. Reload alters the scene by having Aigis' speech be more directed at herself and her own reflections, instead of speaking directly to the player. I love that. I love that for Aigis. She's allowed to talk about herself. And that's why in Reload, this line about you don't have to save the world is replaced with not everything needs to be for some greater purpose. In both instances, these lines are then followed up with some variation about how taking care of another person is noble and is a worthwhile purpose in life. But I will admit that the you don't have to save the world line doesn't quite make sense for Aigis to be saying to the protagonist, which might be why it wasn't in any other version we looked at. Because both of these characters only found their meaning of life when they had to save the world. Aigis found her meaning when she truly felt it, when she truly felt hopeless during the last battle. And the blue-haired boy, Well, he found his purpose. After those lines, there's then the reassurance by Aigis that the others are coming, and the blue-haired boy closes his eyes as another animated cutscene takes place, a very minimalistic one. I know there has been criticism of the Persona 3 original anime cutscenes, because they can look a bit cheap. Personally, I do kind of agree with this. I think the Shinji one leaves a bit to be desired, but these cutscenes have a special sauce, namely in how they're directed, as well as how they employ close-ups or odd angles to show emotion, and you can add on to it how they color these scenes, which adds impact. The cutscene of the blue-haired boy and Aigis sitting in the white void, on the surface, looks a bit cheap. Like, you're telling me they couldn't draw the rooftop and the clear blue skies? It's unfinished, what do you mean? But I instead want to say that the white void is just as impactful as the colorful visuals of the other versions of the ending. Because, in direct terms, the lack of color and lack of anything shows the blue-haired boy leaving this world. He's already passed, and Aigis' words are the last thing he hears before he fully fades away. The world around him is gone. He can't experience it. But he has a smile on his face because he's able to hear his friends. He knows they're coming, and that's more than enough to satisfy him. Now we can talk about visuals, and I'll admit, this is the second least interesting version of March 5th, as there are no pretty colors or dreamlike states, mainly because it's a PS2 game. But there is some efforts. You have a pretty little light ray coming in from the right, the occasional petals above, and memories of the school is playing, which on the first viewing does make the scene feel sublime. But we've already seen 4 other versions that present this better, so the effect is lost. Still, as I said though, it's only the second worst looking version, as the worst looking version goes to Persona 3 Portable, because it's just a visual novel. So in the ending, there is an Aigis PNG overlaid atop a background. No lying on her lap or pretty petals. The background is kinda nice though, and the dialogue here is the same as the original P3 version. So all my praise from there still applies here. What I will now discuss are the optional additions you can tack onto the ending in Portable by having the protag's most precious companion of C's get one last moment with them. In the scene, the protag, after Aigis says she'll protect them, is then prompted to select a member of C's whose social link they've maxed out. Then by selecting that character, it makes it so that character runs ahead the rest of C's to talk to the protag, so that that character is now the last thing the protag sees. In truth, these scenes add nothing, because each character only gets like 3 or 4 lines of dialogue, where they just say, "I remember you, and I love you, and we'll never be apart again," which is sad, yes, because love and junk, and Mr./Miss Protag is dying. But it doesn't hit as hard as Aigis saying it does, because other characters have established their reason for living beyond the protagonist. Each character's persona evolution is tied to their reason for living. Ken and Akihiko tie to Shinji and decide to struggle for as long as they can, just like Shinji. Mitsuru resolves to move forward in life despite losing her father, who is what she anchored her goals to. Yukari is able to anchor herself in the present and move past her grief to live. Fuka realizes that despite her shyness, she wants to be connected with others, and resolves to live for those connections. Junpei naturally lives for the life that Chidori gave him. And I prefer it when Chidori remains dead, but only slightly. And Shinji should be dead, though the idea of him running all the way from the hospital to the rooftop is pretty funny. But overall, I don't think these scenes detract from Persona 3's ending, but they add nothing, very little character, and it just ends up feeling a little mean-spirited since these expressions of love, while sweet, are offset by the fact that Protag dies 5 seconds later. In truth, I wholly prefer the versions of the ending where the Protag does not see his friends. He only hears them, and that's more than enough to make him happy. Original P3, Reload, and the stage show pulled that off. And if you can't tell, I do think that death in Persona 3 is very much preferred. To have the life and death themes be strong and positive, we need to let these characters die. Which is why the fates of Shinji, Chidori, and the protagonist are death. It's sad, but you're meant to keep their memories alive and to persist and go forward. For that reason, I think Persona 3 the manga has the worst variation of Persona 3's ending. Minato Arisato surviving doesn't feel right. Where's the tragedy in my tragic game? And I don't want to talk about the implications of Minato Arisato being alive while being the Great Sia, which means that his body is currently soulless. But whatever. Additionally, in a hypothetical tier list, the manga would then be followed by Persona 3 Portable because it's really just a lesser version of Persona 3. It's a downgrade because they had to make it a visual novel, and we don't get the blue-haired boy sitting on Aigis' lap, which also isn't in the manga, so more points to detract. Leaving us with 4 variations where I really don't think you can go wrong. The movie version is short, but the warm and dreamy visuals make up for it. Add on to it the urgency of C's, and you get an impactful ending. An ending that's made better if you buy into the Aigis and Makoto ship. Then there's the stage show that truthfully did give me the most visceral reaction, as I was immediately driven to tears once Aigis began to sing Kimi no Kyoko to Sakuya. But I can't understand Japanese, though I truthfully can't appreciate this performance. But it did make me feel a lot. Leaving us with Reload versus Original. To be clear, I like both versions. Gameplay-wise, that's a different story though. I kinda prefer Original Persona 3. Non-controllable party members and all. But talking about the ending, Aigis' line about not needing to save the world in the original P3 is the best part of any March 5th scene, in my opinion. That line is the one thing I can say that was better in the original than its depiction in Reload. But I really like Reload's version of Aigis' speech. We can disregard the visuals as Reload wins in that regard, but in terms of the dialogue, in Reload, Aigis' gentle voice, how it sounds like she's putting these thoughts together, is so humanizing, and written in a way that excellently reflects that personal realization. It sells Aigis as her own character, and that's really good for the ending. Original Persona 3 has this as well, but it's limited by how the scene can feel like it's talking directly to the player, which removes it from the story. Additionally, it's not fair for me to rank these two games because Persona 3 means a lot to me. I have a lot of nostalgia for the game. Persona 3 FES is the second way I experienced the ending of Persona 3. The first was, well, it was a Watch Mojo video.
Number 7, Persona 3.
No, don't go! What is he doing?
Nothing like spending your school year going to class, making friends, killing shadows, and sacrificing your life to prevent the end of days.
But after playing Persona 3, years after that video, I can say that I owe some credit to it for saving my life and making me realize the value of connections, making me want to try and be more social, to make me realize that the little things in life matter, to understand that grand, unrealistic goals and successes aren't what will make me happy. I don't have to save the world to find my purpose. What makes me happy are the things that will make me happy. Dedicating myself to a goal, talking to my friends, working on hobbies like making videos. Those are the lessons that Persona 3 has taught me, and I genuinely carry that with me. One way in which I do so can be seen in my videos on Pokemon Reborn and Fear and Hunger. In those games, I wrote my name as Edwin, Edwyn. My name is Edwin, just replace the Y with an I, but ever since playing Persona 3, I've never once put an Edwin with an I as the name of a protagonist in a game. It's always with the Y. The reason is because Edwin with an I is dead, and I don't want to forget that. That blue-haired boy is tied to a small action, to the name, to an event that changed my perspective on life. The old me of the past is gone. He isn't coming back, and I don't want him to. I want to keep stumbling through the future and to keep changing, to evolve and grow, which is exactly what every version of March 5th has taught me. Every version of it has some form of impact. Every version revolves around the meaning of life and finding purpose. In a sense, it's nihilistic. It's happy. It's an acceptance of the unknowable truth in exchange for creating desire and a willingness to try despite the chance of failure and despair. That's why I love that it's Aigis. That's why I love that she's there in the last moments. Because, from a story perspective, she is then immediately challenged after finding her so-called purpose for living, but finds a way to move past it in the answer or episode Aigis. Life is a struggle, and that's okay. This video was a lot. For context, I originally had the idea for this video back in February 2024 as a kind of tribute to March 5th, but that then led me to discovering the Persona 3 movies on YouTube and making my wonderful Persona 3 movies video. However, I'm glad I waited till now, because only now after watching those movies, playing Reload, reading the manga, and finishing my college experience and writing my college final on Persona 3, which I also turned into a video, I feel like I was able to really talk about this topic, really discuss it. And if you enjoyed my, discussion on the ending of Persona 3, go ahead and watch my video where I wrote my college final on Persona 3. I go into a lot of depth on these topics, and I think it's genuinely pretty interesting. But with that out of the way, I hope you enjoyed this video. I have been Zamen, and thank you very much for watching this video. So consider sticking around and not hating my voice. My sole goal here is to improve my writing, editing, and speaking as I go on. Goodbye.